More and more people are leaving China. This process is already being called a mass but quiet exodus. In Europe or the United States, migration usually looks like chaos. Overcrowded borders, refugee camps, caravans on the move. But China is experiencing a different, more subtle kind of crisis. There are no loud statements, no dramatic footage of hundreds of thousands storming fences. Instead, people quietly pack their suitcases. And they are the very people who only yesterday were considered the pillars of the system. In 2025, more than 15,000 millionaires are expected to leave the country, and that's only the official number. Just a year earlier, China had already lost more than 13,000 wealthy citizens, more than any other country in the world. But it's not just about money. It's not only the billionaires transferring capital to Singapore or the US. It's also young people dreaming of studying abroad, families ready to risk their lives crossing jungles and deserts just to reach America or Europe. Even those who seem to have no chance at a new life are leaving. This phenomenon is a symptom of a much deeper crisis. Trust in the system is collapsing. And nothing illustrates this better than the story of Jack Ma. Just 10 years ago, his name symbolized the success of the new China, the founder of Alibaba, a billionaire who built his career against all odds. For Chinese youth, he was a hero. For the authorities, a convenient showcase. But in 2020, at the Bund Summit, Jack Ma took a bold step. He publicly criticized China's financial system, right in front of the country's most powerful leaders. At that moment, nobody realized what this would mean for his future. But within weeks, it became clear. It was the end. The record-breaking IPO of his company Ant Group was cancelled at the last moment. His empire lost hundreds of billions of dollars. The stock collapsed, and Jack Ma vanished from public view. For 5 years, he was gone. No interviews, no speeches, no photos, just emptiness. For millions of Chinese, this became a symbol. If even the country's most famous entrepreneur is not safe, if he can disappear for a single statement, then who can possibly feel secure? This story triggered a chain reaction. People realized that in China, you can lose everything in a single day. And it's not just about money. You can lose your freedom, your career, even your very existence in the public space. This is the true root of the mass exodus. Jack Ma's story is only the tip of the iceberg. Beneath it lies everyday life under Xi Jinping, a reality that has turned into a struggle for survival. Censorship in China is not just about deleting posts online. It is a multi-layered system of control that penetrates nearly every aspect of life. At its core lies what is known as the Golden Shield, an enormous network of filters that monitors internet traffic, blocks foreign websites, and erases any discussion that might cast doubt on the party's policies. Imagine this. You write a message in a small private chat with just 10 friends. You mention that the economy seems to be slowing down or that you dislike a government decision. The very next day, your profile is gone. Your research disappears, your articles vanish, even your name is erased from databases. And you yourself simply disappear. That is exactly what happened in 2024 to Chu Hongpong, an economist from a government think tank. He wrote in a small WeChat group that the Chinese economy was weakening. It wasn't a political attack, not a rally, not even a public article. Just a short message to colleagues. And yet, he was erased. Nobody has seen him since. For millions of Chinese citizens, the signal was clear. If even people like that can vanish, then no one is truly safe. But fear alone cannot explain the scale of the exodus. China's control system works comprehensively. To censorship, it adds the infamous social credit score. This functions like a digital collar that cannot be removed. If your score drops, your life collapses. Forget about traveling. Forget about buying an apartment. Forget about sending your child to a good school. Even buying a train ticket or applying for a loan becomes impossible. The message is simple: obey or lose everything. Then came the years of zero COVID. For anyone who still doubted the power of the system, China showed the world what it could do. Entire cities were sealed shut. People were dragged against their will into quarantine camps. Cameras recorded every step, while drones hovered above, monitoring movements. In 2022, a fire in the city of Urumqi killed 10 people. They couldn't escape their apartments. The doors had been locked due to strict COVID measures. That tragedy became a breaking point. When the video spread online, thousands of people flooded the streets holding up nothing but blank sheets of paper. Thus was born the A4 revolution. A white sheet of paper became a symbol of censorship, a silent scream showing that words were forbidden. And silence itself was louder than any slogan. It was the boldest protest in years. People knew exactly how it could end. And yes, there were arrests, there were beatings, many disappeared. But the essential message was delivered. The country was suffocating. Within days, the government was forced to abandon its zero COVID policy. Yet the bitter aftertaste remained. The Urumqi fire proved that the government would rather let its citizens burn alive than admit to a mistake. The white sheets showed how deeply frustration had been building, and the silence that followed proved one thing. In China, speaking out is still deadly dangerous. And when everything rests on fear, people begin to look for an exit. From factory workers to wealthy entrepreneurs, more and more Chinese now understand there is no future at home. What was once considered an unstoppable economic machine is now creaking and breaking apart before their eyes. The greatest pain point for today's China is the labor market. It is here that the mask of the so-called economic miracle has finally cracked. Official numbers for 2024 looked almost respectable. Unemployment just above 5%. To the casual observer, that doesn't sound catastrophic, but the reality was far worse. The real disaster struck China's youth. In the summer of 2023, youth unemployment reached over 21%. That means every fifth young person in the country was without a job. Imagine a city square filled with 100 recent graduates, diplomas in hand. 20 of them will not find even the simplest work. And how did the government respond? Instead of acknowledging the crisis and searching for solutions, officials simply stopped publishing the data. For half a year, there was silence. Families across the country had no idea how severe the situation had become. Then, when the figures reappeared, they had magically dropped to 15%. How? Very simply. Students were excluded from the calculations. The formula was changed and the problem seemed to vanish. On paper. Economists admit that the true figure is closer to 25%. In other words, 1 in 4 young Chinese today is unemployed. Behind those dry percentages lie shattered lives. Young families unable to pay for housing. Graduates from elite universities forced to work as couriers or delivery drivers. Millions losing hope in the future. But unemployment is only the tip of the iceberg. Its roots lie in the government's own policies. In 2021, authorities suddenly banned private tutoring for school subjects. Overnight, an industry worth hundreds of billions of dollars collapsed. Shares of leading companies fell by 90%. The 7 largest firms alone laid off more than 200,000 employees. Thousands of small schools closed. Teachers were left with nothing. Why was this done? Officially, the goal was to reduce pressure on children and ease the financial burden on families. In reality, the result was the opposite. Tens of thousands of skilled professionals lost their livelihoods, while parents began paying even more for underground, unlicensed tutoring. At the same time, the state attacked other sectors. Online gaming, fintech companies, and the housing market all came under heavy restrictions. The property giant, Evergrande, collapsed under debts of hundreds of billions of dollars. Millions of apartments were left unfinished. Investors lost everything. Families who had poured their life savings into housing found themselves ruined. Even the tech giants, Tencent, Alibaba, and many others, could not escape pressure. Raids, fines, abrupt regulatory changes. Companies were forced to lay off tens of thousands of workers. The message was loud and clear. No industry in China is safe from political interference. This realization became yet another driver of the exodus. If you are an entrepreneur, a startup founder, or a business owner, you know that at any moment, all your hard work can be erased with a single government decree. And then there's the housing market. It was always seen as the golden anchor of China's economy. Millions of families invested in real estate, believing it was the most reliable asset. But now this sector has become a source of despair. Millions of homes remain unfinished. Protests by defrauded buyers are quickly crushed by police. The labor market crisis, the collapse of entire industries. the implosion of housing, all of it combines into one picture. People no longer believe their efforts will be rewarded. This is why the young, once considered the engine of the China miracle, are giving up. They studied, worked endless hours, created companies and projects, believing today's sacrifices would bring tomorrow's prosperity. But now the motor has stalled. Millions of graduates sit at home unemployed. Those who still work suffer chronic burnout. The younger ones look at all this and ask, what's the point of trying at all? From this hopelessness comes a social trend known as lying flat. It means choosing minimalism, rejecting ambition, refusing to join the rat race because the system will crush you anyway. And so the country faces a paradox. On one side, it has colossal resources, infrastructure, and ambition. On the other, millions of young people who see no future at home. And if the youth stop striving, if they choose emigration over careers, then the only thing waiting for China is stagnation. If the labor market and collapsing industries knocked the ground out from under China's youth, the blow to the banking system shattered something even more fundamental: trust in the state as the guarantor of stability. Imagine, you've worked your whole life, 12 hours a day, saving every yuan to buy a home or pay for your child's education. Then suddenly, your bank blocks your deposit. Not because you broke the law, but simply because an order came down from above. That's exactly what happened in 2022 in Henan province. 4 rural banks froze deposits totaling nearly $6 billion. More than 400,000 people were affected. For many, it was their life savings. For some, it was the last money they had to survive. At first, people thought it was a mistake. Then they began gathering in the streets. At first in small groups, then in the thousands. And the bigger the protests grew, the more shocking the government's response became. Instead of protecting depositors and resolving the crisis, the authorities rolled out tanks, not to shield citizens from criminals, but to protect banks from their own customers. The images went viral around the world. Citizens on the streets with banners demanding justice and armored vehicles positioned against them. For many, it was a point of no return. Because if the government is willing to use force against its own people to save the banks, then no one and nothing is truly safe in China. Later, authorities promised partial compensation, but the damage was already done. Trust was broken. Ordinary people reached a chilling conclusion: money in a Chinese bank is no guarantee of safety. This fracture of trust coincided with another crisis, the crisis of official statistics. For years, the world admired the so-called Chinese economic miracle. Growth charts showed 8, sometimes even 10% annually. But soon it became clear that much of it was fiction. Analysts inside the country admitted that between 2021 and 2024, GDP figures had been inflated by about 3 percentage points each year. On paper, the economy looked 10% larger than it really was. The reality was far less impressive. Growth fell from 8% in 2021 to only 3% in 2022. Even after a partial rebound, the situation remained fragile. Exports weakened, foreign investment fled, domestic consumption stagnated. Instead of the promised unstoppable locomotive, China looked like a train rattling apart, with the conductor pretending everything was fine. And when young people can't find work, when entire industries collapse overnight, when banks freeze savings, and when the state paints fake numbers, people lose the one thing that keeps a society moving: belief in the future. That is when the mass escape begins. Ordinary citizens understand tomorrow will not be better than today. And so the only choice is to get out now. Some apply for student visas, others seek second citizenship. Some buy one-way tickets to Singapore or Canada, and others take even more desperate routes, through jungles, deserts, and illegal crossings. History shows that China has gone through mass migration before. In the 1980s and 1990s, when the country was still poor, hundreds of thousands of students left for the West, mostly the United States. But back then, many eventually returned. In the 2010s, more than 80% of overseas students came back, bringing skills, experience, and capital. Their return was seen as proof of confidence in China's future. But today, things are different. Those leaving now have no intention of coming back. They don't want to bring their money into a country where it can be frozen overnight. They don't want to build careers where a government decree can destroy a business in a single day. They don't want to risk their children's lives in a system that literally locked its citizens into burning apartments. The result is what analysts call a double exodus. On one side, young specialists, engineers, and scientists are leaving. On the other, the country's richest elites are shipping billions abroad. And this is no longer just migration. It is an escape of trust itself. And in an authoritarian system, the loss of trust is far more dangerous than any external sanction. The scale of China's current exodus is staggering. This is not just migration, it is flight. It is not about seeking better opportunities. It is voting with one's feet against one's own country. According to the UN, since Xi Jinping came to power, more than 613,000 Chinese citizens have applied for asylum abroad. In the last 5 years alone, the number of applications has risen by nearly 170%. And the most alarming part, it is not only the poor who are leaving in search of survival. Those with power, wealth, and connections, the elite, are fleeing too. In 2024 alone, more than 15,000 millionaires and billionaires left China. Each of them took between $30 million and $1 billion with them. That money will not return. It now fuels economies in Singapore, the United States, Canada, and Australia. For those countries, it means investments, new companies, and jobs. For China, it means a catastrophic drain of capital and talent. But not everyone has millions to buy golden visas. For many, the path to freedom is a desperate gamble. In 2023, more than 25,000 Chinese citizens crossed the Darien Gap, the deadly jungle between Colombia and Panama. This route is infamous as one of the most dangerous in the world. Venomous snakes, sudden flash floods, gangs and cartels preying on migrants, yet even that horror did not stop those determined to flee. Videos online showed Chinese families with young children wading waist-deep through rivers, climbing slippery hillsides, faces exhausted but eyes burning with determination. They were willing to pass through hell itself, just to escape a country that no longer felt like home. But escape does not always mean safety. China has a long arm. Secret operations such as Fox Hunt and Skynet are officially described as anti-corruption programs. In reality, they have become tools to pursue dissidents and critics abroad. Chinese immigrants in the US, Canada, and Europe report threats, surveillance, and pressure on their families back home. Sometimes the stories take an even darker turn. In 2015, 2 Chinese activists in Thailand, both recognized as UN refugees, were arrested and deported back to China at Beijing's request. Swedish publisher Gui Minhai, who printed books critical of the Communist Party, was kidnapped overseas and forcibly returned. Such cases send a chilling message across the entire diaspora. Even distance and new passports may not guarantee safety. China is determined to pursue its citizens anywhere in the world. The picture is bleak. Ordinary workers flee through jungles. Young students chase opportunities abroad. The wealthy ship billions overseas, and dissidents are hunted down even in foreign lands. This is no longer simple migration. It is a collapse of trust in the very idea of the nation itself. And when the poor, the rich, and the powerful all flee together, the signal is clear. The crisis may undermine China's stability from within. Think about it. If millionaires, billionaires, and the country's brightest minds no longer see a future at home, what does that say about China's ability to retain talent, capital, and innovation? History offers grim parallels. The Soviet Union, too, lost its brightest scientists, engineers, and dissidents. The result was inevitable. A system built on fear and censorship could not compete with the outside world. Today, many see China heading down a disturbingly similar path. And so the question becomes unavoidable. Can Xi Jinping hold the country together if its own citizens are voting with their feet against him? Or are we only witnessing the beginning of a much larger process that will reshape not just China, but the entire world? For decades, China was seen as a land of opportunity, a place where today's sacrifices would yield tomorrow's prosperity, a land where youth worked sleepless nights chasing the Chinese dream, where investors believed in stability and growth. But that promise has cracked. The best specialists are packing their bags. The richest are shipping their billions overseas. Even the most loyal professionals see no future at home anymore. When both brains and money flee together, the vision of progress collapses in real time. And only one harsh but honest question remains. What is more dangerous for China? Sanctions from abroad or its own citizens fleeing like it's a burning building?